Hello, coders. Today we're going to be talking about self-taught development, and we're going to mention a couple of resources, some really good resources in today's podcast. I'm joined once again by Tom Vorel, who's been on the show before. Hi, Tom. How are you doing? Have you had a good week?
Hey, Peter. How's it going? Yeah, I've had a pretty decent week.
Awesome.
My third month in my new job, so still picking things up.
Now, we spoke when you were just coming into that job.
Yeah,
I think it was like literally a couple of days into that. So
yeah, it was. I think it was my second week back in January.
How's it going?
It's been fun, but it's been challenging as well. I've been kind of forced to. I've been thrown into the deep water and just forced to swim a little bit. But I've been learning a lot, and I have amazing colleagues to help me out. And in those 3 months, I've learned so much that I've learned more in those 3 months than in those 2 years before on my own, I would say. So yeah,
Excellent.
Definitely positive.
Positive. Excellent. That's great to hear. Wonderful to hear. I'll leave a link to the episode in the show notes below, and I'll put it on the cards on the screen. Well, that's fantastic to hear. I'm really pleased that you're feeling really positive about that and progressing. And it's still really early days, and I can just sense the hunger that you've got and the positivity and the passion, which is awesome. And you're a self-taught developer, right? I mean, we discussed this before, and you were working at it, grinding at it, learning web development whilst you were working in a completely different industry. You had the goal, you had the aspiration, you had the challenge, you had the hunger for it, and you did it. And today we're going to be talking about the resources, some of the resources that you've used, some of the resources that you can recommend. So let's start with that. What kind of things do you have on your list?
Well, first of all, I think that everybody who wants to learn web development or any kind of programming, and if they want to learn on their own, first they need to find how they learn best.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So for me, I always found it less difficult to learn with video tutorials.
Right.
But that's just me. Some people may find audio more beneficial, listening to podcasts, or reading articles, reading books, things like that. But for me, I always found video tutorials most useful. But I tried to combine all of those things, audio. I listened to a few different podcasts. We'll get to that, and reading blogs and some books as well. We'll get to that as well.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah.
So I mean, that's a really good start. The fact that people learn differently, and some people will prefer books over reading. One rule set is not the right rule set for everybody. Everybody has a different sort of style and take, and they can absorb information differently. So I think that's probably the best thing to sort of point out.
Yeah, 100%. And also, you can do all three. For me, some things didn't click until I had a different perspective. So let's say I watched a video tutorial and things just didn't click, and I just still couldn't grasp the idea behind whatever I was learning at the time. Yeah. But then I read an article and looked at it from a different angle, and all of a sudden it clicked. Yeah. So I wouldn't just focus on one specific way of learning. I would definitely do basically anything. Make coding or programming part of your day. Read, do video tutorials, listen to podcasts. Mix it up.
Yes,
because then things stick better than if you just watch tutorials.
That's a really good point. I guess we're all constantly, regardless of how you have set out, if you're self-taught or if you've done the traditional route, we're still to this day still learning, still absorbing.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, today I was listening to all sorts of podcasts. just in the background. They were talking about like refactoring. It was the Iteration podcast, and I was, and there were some others as well. And it was the things that they were saying. I wasn't necessarily concentrating 100% on what they were saying. You know, I wasn't sat down watching them. You know, it wasn't like a Netflix thing where you had to sit down and concentrate and you got some snacks and stuff like that. This was stuff that was just absorbing passively whilst I was working away. Yeah. And there was sort of snippets that were resonating, you know, and that was so I have kind of learnt stuff, but I haven't learnt stuff in the sense of, you know, sitting down and reading a book and sort of like dedicating sort of an hour saying, right, I'm going to learn this, because you don't necessarily know what it is that you're going to learn through a podcast. You just sort of learn it in a passive manner.
Exactly. It's like 50% entertainment and 50% you're actually being productive and you're learning stuff. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I do that all the time.
Right.
Like when I used to work at this other company before I started working as a React developer, what I would do, I had like an hour, let's say 20 minutes long commute to work. So in those like let's say 80 minutes, I would try to like read or listen to something code related, you know, because I didn't have a computer on me. I didn't have like my personal laptop because I had this computer at work. So I was just trying to like absorb information any way possible. So I was listening to podcasts. And if there's one podcast I would recommend, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called Syntax.
Yeah.
It's Wes Boss and Scott Talinsky. And they have an amazing podcast. It's you can learn about like they're JavaScript developers mostly, so it's mostly oriented around JavaScript. But they also have like these episodes focus on freelancing and you know, all kinds of stuff, you know, breakdancing, barbecue tips, all kinds of stuff. So it's entertaining, and you can actually learn something new as well. So I definitely recommend that one. Yeah.
I mean, those podcasts are great. I'm a freelancer, so I'm very blanketed into what my current client set is doing because I have to deal with their requirements. Most of their requirements right now is legacy stuff, right? So I'm working on old technology, trying to get it into the new technology. Some of the new technology, well, a lot of the new technology I'm just not even aware of. So having podcasts and having sort of like things that sort of passively give you information whilst you're doing your day-to-day job, they might say something and you wouldn't know what it is, but at least you're aware of it, and then you can go and look that up later on. There's been many times recently where I've been in a meeting and I've just said, oh, such and such on a podcast mentioned that the other night. You know, maybe we should investigate that route. And it's also learning how other people have solved different problems. And it kind of gives you a sense that, you know, other people have bugs and issues, and it's not just you.
Podcasts are great. They give you like the general awareness of what's in, what's not. Like for me, like let's say I'll give you an example, right? I've heard about Docker and containers many times. I know there's Docker. There's this one called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Kubernetes or something.
Kubernetes. Yeah.
Okay. So I've heard about those things multiple times, and I still have no idea what they're used for. I have no clue what they are. But that's like the general awareness that you get from listening to different podcasts. Or GraphQL. Like I know what GraphQL is. I know what it's used for, but I've never used it in my life. And that's just because I've read about it. I've listened to podcasts, and you get that general information.
That is a very good point, actually. Yeah, that's a very good point because what you've said there is that you're aware, even in your 3-month into your career, you're aware of more technologies than perhaps you use on a day-to-day basis. And it's having that sort of level of exposure to those in a very indirect manner, which I think podcasts can give you. And podcasts are free. So there's no barrier of entry there apart from obviously having the means to listen to the thing. But yeah, definitely. So have you got a list of podcasts that you recommend?
It's mostly syntax. Right. There are some others like Developer T. Front End Happy Hour is a really good one.
I've never heard of that.
Front End Happy Hour is it's Brian Holt and Jim Young, basically people who used to work at Netflix. Some of them are still working there. And they do these. It's actually a really nice concept. They always give a topic. Okay, so let's say today we're talking about freelancing, and every time when you say the word money, we need to take a drink. And that's how they do the podcast. So they're talking about web development, and whenever somebody says like a certain word, they had to drink.
That's so cool. So, that is so cool. I like that. I'm currently on orange juice, but yeah, maybe I should move to the harder stuff. But
yeah, maybe.
Awesome. Okay, so we've talked about podcasts. What else should a self-taught developer be aware of?
Yeah, well, so as I mentioned, I prefer video courses. I've done a bunch of free courses.
Right.
However, even though they're free, which is like the number one advantage, you don't have to pay anything. Usually the quality varies, let's say. Right. You know, and if you go on YouTube and you search for like let's say React course or React tutorial, some of those might be from like 2015 or 2016. Yeah. So that's 3 years ago, which is like 20 years ago in JavaScript land. So yeah. So I would if you can afford to spend a few dollars on a certain technology, I would definitely invest into a paid course. My favorite platform for video courses is Udemy. Right. Udemy get a lot of stick that they don't treat the content creators, you know, they're not fair to content creators. They don't pay them as much. But if you're especially if you're living outside of the US, and you get like a good promo, because they have all these promos going on all the time, and you can buy like 35 hours of quality content for $10, which $10 is basically nothing. Yeah, you know, even if you live outside of the US or the UK, $10 is not that much, and you can get a lot for $10. Yeah. So there are some nice courses. If I could mention some specific ones. Yeah,
go for it.
I have a few teachers that I really liked, and one of them was Andrew Meade. Right. I took his Node.js course and React course. Brad Traversy from Traversy Media also has this very, very, very successful YouTube channel, which is completely free. Yep. But he has some courses on Udemy as well. So him and Max Schwarzmüller from Academind. He has a YouTube channel as well. Right. But his courses are really, really nice as well. He has a really good Angular course. He has a course on React as well and Node.js. Right. So yeah, all of those are really, really good options.
That's a really good list. That's a really good list. And yeah, I'm aware of a lot of those developers and teachers, and they're really, really good. Yeah. You mentioned about the free courses and the courses that are old, and this is an issue, I think, when you are coming into this industry and you don't really know where to look, because there is this you have to have the knowledge of versions. You know, you can't just suddenly jump onto a particular JavaScript framework without being aware of, you know, it was a framework that was 5 years out of date, that kind of thing. So with that in mind, I would, if I was to recommend just trying to go as native as possible, so try to avoid as many frameworks at the start, because that's where all the version issues come into play. I mean, you still get version issues with browser compatibility issues with certain JavaScript stuff, right? But it's not as frequent as a particular version of a framework. And as someone who's done courses myself, it is a very challenging to keep these things updated, because once that course is finished, you want to work on something else, and then you get a raft of people saying, you know, where's the where's this, but in the next course, or people get turned off because you're doing it in an older framework. But also there is the need and the hunger for people learning old stuff, especially if they're working on legacy code. And it's something that you're from the off, you're probably not going to be too exposed to the legacy stuff than perhaps when you're more of an experienced developer. There's an awful lot of legacy code out there. I'm dealing with so much stuff, like just stuff that is, I'm not even going to go into, but it's just dirty code. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there's always going to be the need to learn older technologies, but getting a free course, most of those will be older technologies, and you need to be aware of that when you're going, all right, I'm going to learn JavaScript or PHP or whatever, Python. Sort of having some sort of knowledge as to what versions that they're playing with. I did a Docker in Motion course, and as it was happening, because of the way Docker is, it was pulling in different packages and resources from various different code repositories, and of course, one of those versions changed during the course of the course, right? So I had to then go back and backfit the previous bits of the course because that version had changed. It's I remember fun.
The same thing happened to Brett Traversy, actually, Traversy Media. I remember that it was something like a year ago. He did this whole 10-15 hour course on Bootstrap, Bootstrap 4, something. It was an alpha version. So he released the course, right? And 2 days later, they upgraded the version. It went out of alpha.
Yeah.
And it changed. So he had to re-record the whole course.
Yeah. Gosh.
So that's painful. But that's the advantage of paying for courses, because what I have to say is the courses that I bought from the people I mentioned, they do a sensational job with keeping the courses up to date.
Yeah.
Like Andrew Meade, I bought his Node.js course 2 years ago, and he just re-recorded it and updated it. So now he's using all the latest stuff, and I didn't have to pay extra for that, which is amazing. That's one thing that I really love about these online tutors or teachers, that especially on Udemy, that they keep things up to date.
And also they're more invested in keeping in contact with the students and updating the projects and all of that jazz. Whereas with a free course, it's like, well, it's free. It's kind of on your, it's your responsibility to be aware of these version issues and all that jazz. I did a course for Pact Publishing. It was a Python microservices course, and I released it. And the code is on GitHub, and of course GitHub checks for security issues. A week or so after that course went live, GitHub sent me an email saying that they found a security issue on one of the packages. So then it was up to me to then update that and push that. Even though the course was finished, I had to do that because I knew that people were buying that course, and it wouldn't look good if they bought the course and GitHub said, "Hang on a minute, there's a security issue." And I think it was in the requests package or something like that in the Python pip stuff. But I would be less inclined to do that with a free course, because
100%.
The free course is just, it's sort of done and dusted. It's sort of a decoupled thing. And at the end of the day, all of these free courses, it's just like there's loads of them. So I don't want to spend all my time just updating courses for free.
100%. So, I think free courses should be something like a movie trailer. This is my free stuff. If you pay a little bit extra, you can get way more.
That's good. That's a good take. Yeah. Okay. So, is there any other pros and cons to video courses just in general?
There's one thing that I really struggled with. In video courses, you get the idea that the teacher is live coding it. Like, oh, he doesn't make any mistakes. He's just typing. He's just typing. He's not Googling. He's typing the code as he goes, which couldn't be further from the truth. They actually have like a separate monitor, showing the project, and they just type. They just copy the code, and I thought that, that's how you write code. I thought that's how web was made, or software is being made. And I've struggled with like the imposter syndrome a little bit, but then I started working in the industry, and everybody's Googling stuff. Nobody writes projects like that in like 10 hours. So yeah, I
mean, that's a very good point. The stuff that I've been recording, it literally takes me hours and hours and hours, like a day in some cases, to do a 20-minute run, because I've made so many mistakes, because I've had to edit those out, because I've mispronounced things. And it doesn't it's weird, because I have these discussions with the publishers, and I'm like, look, people aren't interested. Well, they are interested in you getting it right, because they're obviously buying into this. They need to be taught how to do it right, but at the same time, they need to be taught how to discover for themselves issues. And if they can see someone else solving an issue, then A, they're going to feel less of an imposter, because they can see someone having these mistakes, and B, you are providing a means of showing them how to actually look for these things. So with the live coding stuff that I do, it is completely live. It's completely raw, and I think that there is a great sort of benefit to that. It does take far longer, because you're trying to solve a problem whilst you're talking to an audience, whilst writing the code. But it becomes a little bit more sort of interactive, because sometimes people will mention on the chat that you typed something wrong. But yeah, you're completely right. When you've got these pristine courses, it does sort of make a false perception of developers. We are not perfect by any stretch of the means.
Are you familiar with the YouTube channel Fun Function?
I am, yes. MPJ,
they actually, MPJ, he actually does videos like that, where he sits down with I'm blanking out on the name of the other guy. They're basically these two Swedish guys, and they do live coding sessions for people who don't know. And they just like decide what they're going to build, and then they just go on and build it in real time. I saw the comments, and in the comment section, people are going crazy, like, oh, you guys are just being lazy, you don't put enough time into the preparation, and this looks, you guys look like amateurs, you don't put any effort into it. And I'm like, dude, this is how software is made. This is actually how it works. Like, you Google stuff, you break things, and you like ask the other guy how to do it, and he's just like, I don't know. Okay, let's Google it. So they Google together. And I enjoy watching those videos. They're like usually like 30, 40 minutes long. And it's really nice. It's really nice to watch, because that's actually the process.
It's a very natural thing. And it's very raw, and it humanizes the process. I think there's a place for both. I think there's certainly a place for both. But I just certainly don't want any of my audience to think that I'm this expert programmer who just never makes a mistake, because we all do, and it takes so much time to edit things out, and to sort out your mistakes, and a lot of the time, and just like I was picked up on mispronouncing words in the English way. So I was saying things English, and it was for an American audience. So I had to kind of learn the American way of saying things. And
could you give an example?
Data, router, so But yeah, they're good. How about things like books, though? Where is your take on books?
I mean, I've read a few books, but I read Kyle Simpson's books on JavaScript. I think it's called "You Don't Know JavaScript."
Right.
And it's like 7 books, and I think they're for free on GitHub.
Okay.
But I suggest definitely buy those books because Kyle Simpson he's very smart and he knows what he's talking about. So and he probably put a lot of effort into that. So so yeah, but I don't know. Like I read it on a train, but the information for whatever reason when I'm reading a book and it's about programming, I just start falling asleep after like 5 pages. I don't know what it is. I'm just not wired that way. But hey, it's what we talked about before, right? Everybody functions differently. Everybody learns differently.
Yeah.
Somebody might, pick up a book and go through it in one day and retain like 90% of the information. I'm probably not that type of person.
Right.
But I have nothing against it. I've read books on programming. Yeah. If I want to read something, I probably go for like a blog post, which is a bit shorter, easier to digest usually. I used to go on Medium a lot, but now like you have to pay like every other article. So I read Dan Abramov's blog, overreacted.io. That's again React specific, interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's a good.
I don't know. I don't understand. Like he writes these long articles. Like, first of all, let me tell you something about Dan Abramov, right? He works on the React team. For people who don't know, so he's developing React, the framework itself. He's Russian, and he writes these. I think he's Russian. If he's not Russian, I apologize. I believe he's Russian. But he writes these like, you know how you always have like the estimated time to read? Right. Yeah, his blog posts are like 48 minutes.
Wow.
Like 48 minutes to read.
Wow.
And keep in mind that he's writing these super technical articles in his second language, which is like super impressive to me.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that is.
But yeah, so that's got sidetracked a little bit. Yeah. So blog posts are great on Medium. Now again, you got to get a membership to have access. It's not expensive, but I don't know. I remember Medium being completely free, so.
Yeah, and of course, all the coders gravitated to that because it was a free. Yeah. It was like the open source, not an open source, but it had that same mentality, right? It was sort of the open blog platform that you didn't have to worry about installing WordPress or anything daft like that.
Yeah.
So I just want to pick your brains a minute about the books. Do you see books more as perhaps a reference manual rather than a sit down read book for like an hour before bed, that kind of thing?
Yeah, probably yes. It's like when I read books when I wanted to have answers to like specific interview questions, let's say, like what are closures or what is recursion, stuff like that. So I would read about those things. But at the end of the day, you just have to code.
Yeah.
You just have to write the code. So sitting in a corner with a book, yes, you will remember stuff, but it won't help you. You won't build anything by just reading. It's at some point you actually have to sit down and write some code.
Yes. Yeah. And it's easier to write code when you're listening to a podcast or watching a video because it's happening whilst you don't have to be involved in it in the sense of you're not holding the book open, you're not holding the video open, you're not holding the podcast past the MP3 player or whatever. I get that too. So I have like a whole bunch of books that I've sort of had with me for years. Some of them are totally out of date, and I guess this goes back to the free video thing where you have books that are just mega old that you literally won't be reading ever again unless you came up with this weird edge case and legacy code. So I have like PHP books that are very old PHP versions that are just not supported anymore in any operating system on Linux. And where was I going with that? Well, I was going to throw them away. I was going to get rid of them, but I didn't. One, because of the nostalgic reason, because that was the first programming book that I bought.
Yeah.
But also because of the need of the potential need of finding that information in a reference type manner. So I'm not. I won't pick up that book again and just read it from front to back. And I don't actually think I ever did that from front to back. I was just pulling out the specific bits and pieces that I needed at the time. However, saying that, there is a whole bunch of books from a sort of novel perspective that talk about a fictional development team. Phoenix Project is a good one, where they talk about sort of a team environment and a sort of a day-to-day running of a tech team and all the other issues and stuff around, say, project management. A lot of it was resonating with me over the clients that I've had over the years. It's sort of like, I know the hole that he's now got himself into, and so they were cool. They were exciting to read, but I don't see like programming books as exciting reads. I see them more as reference material. But
100% reference material. Yeah. Also with books, like if you're gonna get a book, don't get a book on a framework. Like React, because that's going to be out of date in 6 months.
Yeah.
But if you get a book on C++ or C#, or just vanilla JavaScript, just basic JavaScript, or PHP, those books, the core language itself, yes, it changes, but those changes are not as dramatic, I would say.
Yeah.
As with like certain frameworks, especially like me, I work with React. And, it's like in 6 months, things change so much. Things can change so much in 6 months. So, So, yeah.
I had an incident. Well, it's not a thing. A few weeks ago, I was on the train and I didn't have any signal. However, I was coding, as I always do on the commute. I was stuck for this method, this function. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know the order of the parameters and stuff, and my IDE wasn't set up to give me any of that autocomplete magic. But I had the iPad, and the iPad had the books all stored. And because of the magic that you can do with ebooks, you can search for keywords. You can't do that in physical books. You can't just sort of like search the whole thing for a keyword unless the contents and the index page was laid out in such an easy to digest fashion. And here I could instantly see that there was like 50 or so results of this particular word. And so I was just filtering down that word, that I think it was a function definition, to get that exact one. And it was like a very quick way of me to actually continue working whilst I was offline. So I think that's a good point. That ebooks for reference material is quite powerful.
One issue that I had with ebooks was I had a Kindle,
right?
And on a Kindle, at least my Kindle, the format, the code blocks, they weren't formatted properly, so they would always break. So it had like a half a function on one page, then I had to turn the page, swipe to the left to turn the page. It was the other half of the function. That was kind of annoying. So maybe that's why I didn't find the books that I was reading at the time more useful, because I just I don't have a tablet.
Right.
I only have my laptop, and I don't like reading on a laptop.
I understand. I understand. I think with physical books, I don't know whether this is just me being lazy or the dyslexic side of me. I find it very tricky to read code in a book. I find it far easier to do that on a screen, because the screen in your IDE is colored and it's all formatted in the way that you're used to. And when I'm just reading black and white code it's usually on several pages, right? So like you said, it's not formatted correctly. It's sort of half of the function is on the next page. I find that very difficult to follow, really difficult to follow. But yeah, I guess it could work for some. But the brilliance I found with ebooks is the way that you can search through them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I just wish that there was a way of, and maybe there is, I don't know, maybe the commenters could let us know, but I wish there was a way of, if you had a coding book in an ebook form, I wish there was a way of displaying the code in the same way that you could display it on an IDE with the fancy colors and everything. Because your tablet is colored, right? So just because the book isn't, the physical book, maybe there's a way of doing it. I don't know, but yeah,
I'm not sure. Maybe in the comments, as you said, they will let us know.
Yeah. So in terms of the books to buy for or to download when you are a self-taught dev, is there you mentioned to go for the programming languages rather than the frameworks, right?
Yeah.
Is there like a set of books that you would recommend, or a genre, say like PHP for beginners rather than PHP for data scientists or something like that? Do you have a section of books that you would recommend?
To be honest, I haven't read many programming books, but the series that I already mentioned, You Don't Know JavaScript, by Kyle Simpson, that's really good. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 6 or 7 books,
right?
And he goes through everything about JavaScript, how it works under the hood, which is some of the stuff you won't ever use, but it's really good to know like how it works. Under the hood, what you're actually doing. Like it helped me a lot when I was learning React, because as every self-taught developer does, I jumped into React way too soon. So then I was reading through those books and I was like, okay, so classes, okay, so that's not a React thing, that's actually JavaScript thing. Okay, constructor, okay, I see, it's not just React specific thing, it's actually a JavaScript thing. And you put you put the pieces together and you actually start understanding why they did, or why you can appreciate the framework, how it's making your life easier in comparison to just, the core language.
Yeah. I totally dig that. I should say that if for the new programmers and developers out there, if you're interested in learning books, then do check out the Iteration podcast, because they have a fantastic set of episodes that go through chapter by chapter, and hats off to them, because they go into real depth into the particular chapter. They do like a chapter, an episode. They've got other episodes that do other things, of course. But they talk about it from the perspective sometimes of their projects. So that's interesting, because you get their sort of perspective, their insights and their knowledge and their experience along with the book. So yeah, do check them out if you haven't done so already.
What's the name of the podcast?
Iteration. Yeah.
Okay. I'll check that out, because I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
Iteration. Okay. Thanks for the tip.
No worries. There's other good podcasts out there, I should say.
Yeah, like this one.
Thank you. So from the set of a developer coming on to the industry, not knowing really where to go for resources, so they would probably be aware of like books and videos and stuff. What is the thing that they really should focus on? If, for instance, they were a React developer, what is the thing that they should do first of all?
The basics.
Right. And
the basics.
What is that?
Funny story. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I had this task that I had to do at work, right? Mm-hmm. It was React Redux. The React part was fine, because I know React. I've learned in those 2.5 months Redux pretty well as well. Mm-hmm. So I had everything I had in place, but I didn't know how to merge like 2 nested objects. Like there was one object with like multiple levels and another object, and I needed to merge like the two properties of those objects. I didn't know how to do that.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with React. That's just basic data structures.
Right.
So what I started doing actually, there's this excellent site, which I would also recommend. It's called Free Code Camp.
Right.
It's 100% free. It's freecodecamp.org.
Right.
It's 100% free. It's nonprofit. You can donate I think $5 or something like that if you want to, but you don't have to. And they have this nice section on data structures and basic algorithms and stuff like that. It's not the most exciting stuff to do, at least for me. But it helps a ton when you learn how to merge arrays or, slice and splice and all those basic operations. It's so important because 90% of the issues that come up in my day-to-day job are somehow connected to just me not being able to work with data structures or something like that, I can create a component, I can use the component, I can make a, for loop and stuff like that.
Right.
But some of the basics, it's just so underrated. People don't like doing the basics. I'm the same way. I don't necessarily enjoy, doing algorithms and, solving these, using heavy logic. Yeah,
I'm with you with that.
But it's really, really important, and it will save you so much time in your job when you get hired. So I would recommend focusing on the basics because React, I keep talking about React. I'm talking, from my perspective.
Yeah, you are a React developer. Yeah.
But if frameworks, they're not that difficult to learn. Like the basic concept, if especially if you're like a senior developer, you can learn how to build an app with a framework in a day. But it's the basics that hold a lot of developers back from actually being able to build awesome stuff.
And when you say the basics, do you mean the things that are perhaps agnostic from the programming languages themselves? Like just the core concepts of
programming. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be language specific. Right. Just programming concepts. Especially this is especially for self-taught developers. If you're a computer science graduate, you probably gone through those things at school. But if you're just completely self-taught, it's really important to kind of catch up with the CS graduates in that area. And it's something that I realized after I started working full time.
Yeah.
So I would, very underrated.
Yeah.
The basics. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to, nobody's excited. Ooh, I got to work on this, algorithm today. But it's really important.
Yeah.
That's the biggest lesson actually that I've learned in those 3 months working professionally.
Right. Yeah. I dig that. I really do. Learning the basics is so important. Having the knowledge of the fundamentals, and it doesn't need to be JavaScript. It doesn't need to be Ruby or Python or PHP. It's just knowing what an array is, variables are, knowing how things generally hang together. Yeah. Knowing things like the runtime versus compile time. Also, from the perspective of a web developer, knowing how the web works.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. That as well.
Yeah.
Like the response codes. Like the other day, I was going through I don't know how many response codes, because I was working on this thing and I kept getting I don't even know, some number in the console, and I had to Google it because I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely important. So important. So do you recommend learning those before jumping in and learning more of the programming stroke framework type stuff? Yeah. And you say free code camp, right? That's the place that you.
Yeah, there are more. I think more pages like that. Codecademy is another one, but they changed their website. I haven't been to their website in a long time, and yesterday I was looking at it, and they have like a pro plan now, so I don't know how that works now. But Free Code Camp is really great because they have like this built-in text editor, so you don't have to have your own editor. You can just, and they have all these like, it's all challenge based. So you get a challenge and you need to solve it, and if you cannot solve it, you can click to get a hint, or you can, get the solution. But I started doing that just, to improve like those basic programming skills. Like those, as I said, those are not language specific. You can do that in any language. Doesn't matter if it's JavaScript, Python, PHP. Yeah. But just those basic principles, so important.
Yeah, definitely. So there are certainly lots of resources out there, free and paid for. How do you identify from the perspective of someone who's never done a course or never read a book on programming? How do you identify that this is actually a good course? Because at the end of the day, you're investing time. So how can you get the best bang for your buck, even if it's free?
Yeah. On Udemy, I'll give an example. On Udemy, which is where I spend most of my time learning, there's a review section and ratings. Right. So always check for the amount of reviews the course gets, and obviously how high the review is. Right. Then when it comes to like certain teachers, like for me, let's say Andrew Meade, which is a teacher that I really, really like. His way of teaching also gives you loads of challenges. It's not just, building this. He gives you like these challenges along the way that you have to solve by yourself. Okay. So that's one teacher that I really I like the course structure and the way he teaches. So I bought like 3 or 4 courses from Andrew Meade. Because if you find that one person that like suits you, stick with them, because obviously, you're not going to find anything better if if you already have this.
I mean, if the teachers, he, she, whoever, their coding style is what you can absorb better than, say, someone else's coding style, it doesn't mean that they are a better developer or a worse developer. There is a teaching skill involved, and everyone has their different ways of presenting a class and so forth. Yeah. And
it's also very subjective. Like what works for me doesn't have to work for the next guy or the next person. So that's why I'm saying, like, when you find that one person, it can be more than one person, obviously. Once you find the resource that you like, stick with it and learn as much as possible, and then search for other things. And also, don't jump from course to course, because I have a huge problem with that. Like I tend to like get halfway through one course, and then I have like all these other courses that I really would like to do. So I'm like 20%. In this course, and then I jump to that course, do like 40%, then I go back to the previous one. Just stick with one course, focus on one course. Once you're done, then build something, because it's not just about, going through courses. You actually have to build stuff. So once you finish a course, build something, use that knowledge that you acquired, and create something, because that's what it's all about. It's not about going through courses mindlessly, getting a job. You actually want to create some stuff. So I guess that's the difference between perhaps the learning the fundamental concepts to building a project. There is a gear change that you need to sort of apply. You obviously need to learn the fundamentals, but then you need to do something with it. And there's some really good stuff on Udemy and other places where they'll present you with a project to build, and you build it with the instructor. And in some cases, like you said, there's homework involved where you go off and do other bits and pieces as well.
there's also many ways of doing the same thing. So one instructor might have a different way of solving the problem than another instructor, and you'll soon learn, especially in the industry, that there's positives and negatives with both sort of ways of doing things. Some have performance issues. Some may have more security issues. And sometimes you are restrained to a particular requirement that won't let you do the better thing. So sometimes you have to be aware of all those other things that can do that particular, make that solution work. Okay. So is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of learning, getting some resources for self-taught devs?
Yeah, maybe some general tips. Yeah? And one general tip that I would give is consistency over quantity.
Oh, that's a good one.
Consistency is key when you want to learn how to program.
Yeah.
Like as I mentioned before, make it a part of your day and do something every day.
Yes.
Like every day.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if it's Sunday, Wednesday, something every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to involve you writing some code. Listen to a podcast if you don't have your computer, you know, or read a book or read a blog post, something like that, you know. And or if you're doing a video course or video tutorial, even if it's much better to do like an hour every day or 30 minutes every day than not doing anything for 4 days and then doing like 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon and then not touching it for the rest of for the entire week and then doing another 5 hours on a Saturday. That's I wouldn't recommend doing that because you're gonna forget half the things, you know, or half the stuff that you've learned the previous weekend. And
that is
consistency.
Such a good point. And what's your take on things like 100 days of code challenges and stuff like that?
I've seen those hashtags on Twitter. I never participated, but I think it's a good idea. You know, that you have a community. You know, somebody that holds you accountable, and it's I think it's kind of addictive as well.
Yeah,
like you don't want to break the streak. You know, if you're on day 78, you don't really want to break. Your nice little run.
But do you think that from your perspective, do you think it's too much of a pressure, or do you think it's the right number of days?
It can be too much pressure because that's what I said. You know, I don't have like. Even though I love programming and coding, there are days where I don't want to write code. But that doesn't mean I don't want to read an article or watch a YouTube tutorial. You know, I still consider that as doing something. It's you know, you said you can put definitely a lot of pressure on yourself by, you know, I have to write, you know, 50 lines of code today.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't think that's the way to go because you're going to get burned out pretty quickly.
Well, I follow that hashtag on Twitter, and I've seen some real, you know, some really, really good streaks, and hats off to everyone who's done it because it is a massive challenge. But then
that's actually started on a free code camp, I think.
Oh, okay.
They came up with that.
Okay.
Free code camp.
I have also seen people who unfortunately for matters out of their control just haven't been able to fulfill it, and perhaps they've gone quite far, and so they've had to sort of admit defeat. But I have a problem with that because it's that I just think that it may have been because they had things going on in their life that they couldn't control, and therefore they couldn't actually spend the time to write the code. And there was some people I saw that pretty much restarted it from zero. Whereas my take on it is that the things that we've mentioned, reading books, watching videos, listening to podcasts, if you can do that for 100 days and write code, say for 75 days, give yourself 25 days worth of margin of error, then that still is a massive achievement. Even if it's just listening to a podcast on your commute home. Because you're changing your habit, you're changing your routine to be thinking more like a programmer.
Yeah.
You're not just going, I can't do this because, time is against me.
Yeah. Also, people get this idea like you're not supposed to do that because you have to. You're supposed to do that because you want to in your free time.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think that this 100 days of code, it's great that, you have something that actually I have to code today, that it's something that makes you more productive. Mm-hmm. But it's also you're supposed to, you should want to code.
Yeah.
You don't need a hashtag. I don't need a hashtag 100 days of code.
Yeah.
For me to sit down and code something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical as well.
So if someone was to tweet, I couldn't write lines of code today, but I listened to a podcast on code. That to me is an acceptable, programming day, right?
Not only is it acceptable, it's completely fine.
Yeah.
As I said, I don't want to I have days where I don't want to write code. Mm-hmm. I want to listen to Scott Dolinsky and Wes Boss talking about breakdancing and then, transitioning to some, I don't know, React stuff. I want to do that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily, putting too much pressure on yourself is one of the worst things you can do as a self-taught dev, because you're burned out. Mm-hmm. And you actually haven't got hired yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. 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 And then you end up resenting it. You end up resenting it all the time that you've spent on it. And then imposter syndrome sets in because you're in self-doubt. Everyone else is doing it. Yeah. It can be a nasty cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are also days where it's completely fine to just, take a day off. There are days where I just want to watch YouTube. Yeah. Or watch football.
Yeah. 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 I regularly watch films whilst I have the laptop open with too many tabs open with all sorts of articles, and the IDE, I've got at least 3 or 4 projects on a go at one time whilst I'm watching a film, and I might have written, say, 5 lines of code whilst downstairs with my wife, apparently trying to watch a film. But it's sort of like this thing where sometimes you don't have to give yourself a portion of time to write. I mean, I do, because I'm a freelance dev, right? I have to say, I am at work at these times, but from a perspective of someone who's learning to code, you don't necessarily need to be that strict. However, saying that, you were extremely strict on yourself, weren't you? When you were learning, in the sense that you gave yourself a portion of hours per day to really grind. Yeah, it was. So that's kind of hypocritical for me to now be preaching that. You should take days off. No, but as I said, consistency. That's the key. Yeah. Do something every day. Yeah, and just don't stop for more than 2 or 3 days. That's usually a bad sign. If you need to take a day off after a month or 2, that's fine, but make it a part of your day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't do anything code related, whether it's reading an article, coding, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, whatever it is, talking to somebody about code, So just be consistent. Be consistent. Yeah, it's so easy to jump off that horse. I used to, I shan't say I do now. I used to do a lot of running, to the point where I was getting obsessed with running. And I would just run for miles and miles and miles. I can't run now because I've given that, I haven't given myself enough time to do it. And I know that if I was to put my running shoes on and go for a run, sure as hell not going to be able to run the same distance I did when I was at the peak. And that is because I haven't kept that up. It's a consistency thing. Yeah, but I mean, if I was going out for hours and hours running, I wouldn't be doing this podcast, but it's sacrifices at the end of the day. So consistency is very, very important. And you also mentioned going out and meeting people. So meeting other developers. You don't have to be in the industry to talk to other developers. You could just go off to a meetup or a user group. I spoke to Kimberly from Codebar, probably when this goes out, a few episodes behind. It's a fantastic volunteer organization where you can be taught code from a very sort of beginner level. And you go to these fantastic places that are hosted by the very prestigious companies, Twitter and all sorts. And that gives you a sort of a level of exposure to the environment of coding before you're actually a coder. Or I shouldn't say that because you are a coder, but before you're in the industry. Yeah. But the thing is, I never knew about all of this. I never knew about these things when I was starting out. If anyone's watching, go on to, say, meetup.com and just search for local meetups of code.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised how many of those are taking place near the place that you live.
Yeah, and all the ones that I've been to have not had a sort of requirement of entry. You can just go. So some of them, obviously, the conferences you have to pay for, but there are a lot of free things available where you can go and speak to developers. It is a little bit nerve-wracking though, when you are sort of speaking to someone who has been in the industry for years and years and years and years. But we are nice.
But actually, it can work the other way around as well. Like, one of the notes that I made is like, get on Twitter if you want to learn to code.
Yeah,
and follow professional developers.
Yeah.
But I think I talked about this last time a little bit. When you follow all these super smart people, you get the idea that everybody is like that. Everybody in the industry is like that. So you get the idea that everybody is Dan Abramov or Sarah Drasner or all these super smart people. And then you are this person actually wrote this entire library that is used by these gigantic corporations all over the world. And I know how to make a div red. So you get that idea that, I'm never going to be as good as this person and this and that. But then you go to a local meetup and you realize, like, there are people just like you who are learning to code, and they're working their way through. And you can meet some of those people at those local meetups. So it happened to me yesterday, actually. I started this evening course, like 6 weeks Node.js course. And yesterday was the first lecture, and I met some nice people, and I realized, like, okay, I'm actually not that dumb like I thought, because, we're kind of on a similar skill level over there. So it can work the other way around as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So is that like is that a course that you go to, a class that you go to in the evenings?
Yeah. Every week. It's 6 weeks intensive Node.js course.
Awesome.
This local company, they started the course basically to give back to the community. I guess, and also scouting for talent, I would say.
Yeah. I was talking to Kimberly on Codebar, and she was mentioning similar things, like, the people who host these things are also after devs. Right? So
if you start going to meetups, you can get a job. Actually, you can get hired.
Well, and another point that I want to make is that the speakers that I know and I've seen at various PHP conferences, they normally go and try out their talks at user groups. So if you can't afford, and not a lot of us can afford the crazy ticket prices for conferences, let alone the flights to get there, a lot of them actually go to their local user groups and try out the content. So you get that that sort of exposure from these people who are going to talk at these massive, prestigious conferences. Some of the thing, I don't know what it's like where you are, but with the conference, with the user groups here, we like to go out and have a beer afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So so you have that sort of interaction in a very comfortable environment. And it was great. It was great when I was at PHP Sunshine PHP a few months back in Miami, and it was great to see the speakers before the talks, because you got an insight to how they were sort of preparing, and it was very humanizing. These weren't robots who were just going on and making fantastically perfect talks. These were guys and girls and women and who were trying to go through the notes in their heads, and you just got that sense of these are human beings. These are. I was still totally nervous though when I actually introduced myself, and I asked a couple on the podcast. But personally, I've got a problem with nerves, but I think everyone does to a degree. Yeah. But they are just human beings, right? They are just human beings.
100%. Actually, funny story, because you said something about conferences. React Conf, which is actually the biggest Reactive or React Conf, the biggest React conference in the world. It was actually in Prague, which is here in the Czech Republic. I think it was last year. So I was like, okay, I might go to that. Sounds fun. But then I checked out the ticket prices, and quickly changed my mind.
It's I as being a freelancer, I kind of need to teach myself more because I'm not in a single company for years and years, right? So I don't know a lot of the client's code like the back of my hand, like I would do if I was in a company for decades. And the level of exposure of the technologies is greater, I feel, being a freelancer. And therefore, the more I need to learn and teach myself. So I do find conferences is a good thing, because if you can find one that has a very wide, varied spectrum of bits and pieces, then that's really good. And also the social interaction and networking as well is wonderful.
Yeah. By the way, bring it back to learning resources, you can actually watch all these conferences on YouTube.
That's
there are a few
true.
channels.
Yes.
There are a few channels. I think Coding Tech is one channel.
Yeah.
But I've watched some conferences on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's also really good way to learn.
Yeah. And just talking about the nervousness. If you want to see a nervous speaker, then I have 2 user group talks that I've done at PHP Southwest where I was so nervous. So
I'll check that out.
I might put some links in the show notes if you want to laugh.
Please do.
That's a very good point. These things that you pay for through your teeth, they are often on YouTube, and the good the really high paying conferences, they often have very good video recording and audio recording. And again, you can download that and off of YouTube and listen to that on your train journey or what have you. I've learned a lot from other people through that means, because I haven't been able to afford the prices to get up and actually see them. And also you can scrub forward and back, right? So sometimes it's good to have that at your disposal. Often when you go to a conference or a user group and you've got a whole bunch of talks, your mind is going into so many different places at once, because you've learned something and you're excited over that, but then you're about to listen to a talk about something else. And so you kind of need that time just to process all of those things. But with YouTube, you have the playlists and you can go through and pick ones that you want. But this is, I think back to when I was starting out in this industry, we never had any of this stuff. We never had YouTube. We never had Facebook. We never had Twitter. Yeah. These all happened after I was on. So there is so much more available to self-taught devs.
We have it easy. They definitely have it easy now. And you can learn this, you can go anywhere you have it. You can learn anywhere with an internet access and a computer.
The thing though about that is that because it has become quite saturated, you've got the free courses and the courses that aren't necessarily of a good quality sort of muddled in with everything else. It is a bit of a challenge sometimes to sort of navigate those waters and find the quality. And I guess just going back to one of your points, if you're enjoying doing it, then it's something that you should continue doing. If perhaps you're listening to a course and it's just not working for you, don't just think that it's you just not understanding the concept. Maybe it's the teaching style. Maybe you should just go and check something else out.
Yeah, you can always get a refund on Udemy, I think.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be a problem.
Awesome. Well, it's been fantastic speaking to you, Tom. Is there any?
Likewise.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm so happy that you're doing well in the company.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how that goes in the future. But is there anything else you wanna shout out, mention?
Not really. No? Just you can follow me on Twitter.
Yep.
At Tom Vorel 13. And don't quit. To all the aspiring devs, do not quit. I know it gets hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. It doesn't get easier.
No.
And just don't quit, because you'll regret it.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you ever so much, Tom, for spending your time with me this evening. And thank you ever so much for everyone watching on the YouTubes and listening on the podcast. No worries, Tom. No worries. Thanks again. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.